Hey everyone, Kyle Erickson here. In this video, I want to go over how I set up this room to film these videos and the gear that I use to make everything. This has evolved a lot over time. When I made my first video, I started out with basically just a cheap cell phone and a $20 mic. And that's a perfectly good way to start out, especially if you're just trying things out or you just want to get your feet wet. But as you progress, you can start slowly picking new things up. Especially over the last year or so, a lot has changed and improved with this setup. So let's go on a tour. All right, so this is the room that I do all my recording in. It also doubles as a workout room. You can see the weight set up right there. In the corner is all my recording stuff. So I got my desk that I usually set up, my lights, and all my stands here in the corner, along with some stuff in the closet. So just some noise isolation stuff in there. But that's enough of that. Let's get this stuff set up. Everything is now set up and it takes me about 15 minutes or so to get everything where it needs to be. And I'm just going to pull up my phone and just do a quick pan around so you can see my view of everything from here. You can see the camera in the front of us here, which is my Fujifilm X-T4, set up on a tripod with the Viltrox 23mm f1.4 lens attached, which is the lens that I use to film all these talking head videos. I film at 4K 24 frames per second with a shutter speed of 1/48 of a second and my aperture set to 2.8. The nice thing about the X-T4 is it does have an option for a 1/48 of a second shutter speed, where most cameras, the closest you're going to get to that is 1/50th. And for those of you who don't know, there's just a general rule where you want your shutter speed to be double that of your frame rate. So if I shoot in 60 frames per second, I'd want a 1/120 shutter, 120 frames, 240 shutter, and so on. The difference between 1/48 and 1/50th probably isn't that noticeable, but if you're a camera nerd, it is satisfying to get that exact multiple. This camera does have a fully articulating screen, meaning that I can fold it out and see my face as I'm filming. But one thing that you do find on a lot of cameras, including this one, is when you use external connections like, say, a mic or a USB, it does obstruct the screen view when the screen is folded out. So to combat that issue, I have this 5.5-inch FeelWorld F6 Plus monitor that I run all my video through. This allows me to see the view of what I'm recording unobstructed, and it's just a lot easier for me to see exactly what the picture looks like. I can also clearly see things like audio levels, focus peaking, the histograms, vector scopes, along with a whole bunch of other things, all so that I can make sure everything looks good. A lot of these features are available on the camera as well, but the more stuff that you cram onto that little screen, the harder it is to see the actual image, and I find that that's when mistakes happen. Also attached to the camera is my mic, which is the Deity VMic D3 Pro, which is sitting on a little boom arm here that I placed just out of frame. I try and get that as close as possible to my head without showing up in the frame, and then I angle it down towards my mouth so it picks up my voice. This is a directional shotgun mic, so it picks up the sound directly in front of it and not from the rest of the room, which is really beneficial so you aren't picking up all the surrounding noise. That being said, this room does still produce a little bit of echo or reflection, and the mic will still pick that up to some extent. So to alleviate that, I use a moving blanket across the back wall of the room, along with some portable noise isolation panels that I mounted on pieces of foam core. Because this is a multi-purpose room and I'm not the only one in here all the time, I didn't want to put this stuff up all around the room. It's not the greatest to look at, so this is kind of a happy medium. And I just placed those in spots that the moving blanket isn't covering. The moving blanket really helps dampen the sound, and I may end up picking up more of those. A lot of creators put those on the floor when they record, which does help dampen the sound as well, so that's something that I am looking at. And they're also really inexpensive. You can usually grab these anywhere from $10 to $30. colors, so it's a really easy way to improve your sound. Having all this up with a directional mic isolates my voice quite well, and it just promotes a lot better sound so that when I pull this video into my editor, it already sounds a lot more professional without me having to fix anything in post-production. Audio is probably one, if not the most important part of this setup, but another thing that I have spent a lot of time on that makes the biggest difference visually is lighting. My primary light source is a Godox SL60W with an octagon softbox that's also made by Godox with a grid over it. The SL60 does a really good job of giving off the light that I need, while the softbox diffuses that light so I don't have any harsh shadows in my image. I use the grid to prevent any light spill because this room is fairly small and I want to keep that background darker. The grid just keeps my light a little bit more confined to my face and it doesn't spill out into the corners of the room. The nice thing about the SL60 is the brightness is adjustable, so I can dial that in exactly where I want it. Right now it's set to about 30%, which is about perfect. If I were to have this set to 100%, it would just blow out everything, and then I'd probably have to consider using ND filters to kind of adjust the image. On the opposite side of the SL60 is just a white piece of foam core that I'm using to reflect the light from the softbox and fill in the opposite side of my face a little bit, just so that there's no harsh drop-offs or shadows. And just behind that, there is a little portable RGB LED light that I use just to give the edge of my face a little bit of glow. I also have a really cheap softbox that sits just right over top of me that points at the top back of my head, and that's just there to highlight that area a touch to help separate me from the backdrop. And speaking of backdrop, behind where I'm sitting, I've got a few practical lights. There are two Edison style light bulbs that I have on a dimmer, so I can control those as well and adjust the brightness level to how I like them best. And one of the newest additions that I'm trying out in a number of spots right now is sticking right in the middle above my head, and that is the Nanlite Pavotube 15C. I'm currently using it to add a little bit more depth and dress up the scene a little. I may end up putting this somewhere else, maybe just out of the scene as a backlight pointing color at my background, but this is where it's being used for now. I will end up using this a lot more for other video and photo work, but these lights are pretty expensive, but they do give off amazing light. They're fully RGB as well, so you have a lot of options for how you can use these, and they're really portable, so overall a really versatile light. Like, check this out. The light that these give off is awesome. This is only at 9% brightness, so they get really bright as well. Anyways. So there are quite a few little pieces here, but I've accumulated everything over time. I'm always trying new things in this space and working to get better, so I'm sure by this time next year you'll probably see even more changes, but I do really like the result that this is giving me right now. If you want to check out any of the gear that's in this video, it'll all be linked below in the description. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. It does help me out a ton. If you want to see more tech-related content, tutorials, behind-the-scenes stuff, please subscribe. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Well, oh, it's coming, it's coming.